Good day, everyone, and welcome to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. I appreciate you being here for me for this one. Kevin McNulty, he goes back to the first season of Stargate Atlantis as Dr. Warner in a very memorable episode called, and it's escaping me right now, The Enemy Within. Gosh. And he played that character for the first 3 seasons of the series and then went on to play Lycus, Chancellor Lycus, in Stargate Atlantis Season 2's Inferno as well. But we're also on here to get to know him a little bit more and some of his backstory. Kevin McNulty, welcome to Dial the Gate. Thank you for being with me, sir.
Hey, nice to be here. Nice to meet you, David.
Absolutely. And I told you this beforehand, but I was like, you know what? I really need to share this for everyone. We just had Alex Sahara on, and he told me to tell you hello, and he hasn't forgotten that you killed him in Cold Squad. So,
That's funny. I haven't seen him for a long time.
Vancouver is full of people who worked on this series for 17 seasons. I can't imagine the number of people that I've had on. You could probably go down the list. I know them. I worked with them. I worked too much with them. I know them. I mean, what does Stargate mean to that community up there, do you think?
Well, that's exactly what I did. I IMDb'd Stargate, and I looked at the cast, and you get down to people who have done one episode, and there's I'm going to say hundreds, and you go through the list and you say, oh, there's so and so, there's so and so, there's so and so, and it's I'll say this right now is that this is this podcast or YouTube cast is like a living history of film in Vancouver. Like it melds all these stories of all these different actors and producers and writers and directors and all that. And if you listen to it, there's just an amazing amount of detail that gets filled in. It's really quite incredible. And congratulations.
Thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. That was the intent all along. And the number of people who made the show possible over the years is quite extraordinary. No one, rowed in a boat alone in order to get this one made. You all created something pretty phenomenal, and you go back really to the very beginning, and I want to get into that in just a couple of minutes here. But I'm going to spring one on you. I hope you're okay with that. But I'm looking at your studio behind you there, and we do show and tell sometimes on the show. Is this some of your work behind you here? And is there anything that you're willing to share, if so, that you've made? I'm just looking at the space that you're in.
Yeah. This is my shed. So that's my piano back there. It's buried right now.
Okay.
But no, I've morphed into an artist in the last not very long couple years. And I think I was always more of an artist than like a musician. I remember in the 7th grade, before you go into high school, they gave you, there was electives and you could choose music or art. And I played piano at the time, and I thought, oh, I'll take music because that'll be an easy whatever. I mean, I was 13 or something thinking that. But I should have taken art. I really should have.
Should have been brave. It's so easy to look into our younger selves and say, you could have been brave there. It's like, yeah, I know, but I didn't. But do what you can now. So it sounds like you found it.
That's exactly what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. It's rather meditative.
Is there a piece you'd be willing to share or?
Oh, no, not really. No,
okay.
Not offhand.
Okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot.
I have pictures of things.
Okay.
But,
no, it's
I
all
don't
right.
think there's a real piece right here.
Okay. No, it's perfectly fine. I wanted you to have the opportunity, though, because I like Tom Macbeth I've had on, and Tom, the whole wall behind him was filled with things from First Nation, and all like his wall behind him was like a portrait of Vancouver. So we must have spent like a half an hour going through every piece
Oh,
through the
nice.
YouTube channel. Gary Jones was
I'll
the same
tell
with
you
him and
right
his son's
now that
paintings.
in my shed right now, I have an ashtray that Tom Macbeth gave me because he worked with my wife, who said Kevin was looking for it's like the old style stand up ashtray that sat on the floor. It had a whole stand,
Uh-huh.
and the size of the ashtray is about this big, and it's black glass. And he found one, and he came over for some reason, and he said, "Oh, I found this, a couple months ago. Here, have it." I said, "Are you kidding?" So, small world.
Thoughtful that way. Yes. Man. When did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in acting? When did you realize that, you know what, I think I may have something that I can give back here? You were already performing, I guess, at music, at a piano at a fairly young age, it sounds like. But what
Well,
spawned that direction?
Well, I've thought of this now, and I've thought of this for a while because I wasn't any kind of a film buff I didn't have any film idols or anything like that, like from very young. I remember one of the earliest memories I ever had was playing El Kabong, and I think the neighbor kids had a Zorro outfit that came with a cape and a hat and probably the visor thing. Oh, there goes my dog.
It's okay. We had dogs in the last one too.
Okay. And I realized that it comes from McGraw, and that Quick Draw McGraw, who is a white horse sheriff cartoon, would go around and find the bad guys and kabong them with a guitar, and that's how he'd capture them. Like, you're under arrest, El Kabong. And we did this. I'm thinking, I'm 5, 6, 7 years old, and I remember doing it. And I was the one who was dressed up and doing the kabonging, and we would do it like 20 times in a row or something, and just laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. I remember that. That's a very specific young memory.
You weren't smashing any guitars, were you? Smashing the splinters.
No. I mean, I wasn't injuring any fellow children either, right? Apparently. Around the same time, another distinct memory I have is I wasn't one for throwing fits as a child, but at this particular time I was told to do something and I didn't want to do it or something, and I actually threw a fit. I remember the kitchen floor, the family. So it's me and at least 4 siblings. I think one wasn't born then, and I remember throwing myself to the floor and kicking and screaming, and I was so upset about whatever, I don't even remember what it was, and the crowd laughed. They laughed, and I registered that, and I swear I might have been 5 years old or 6 years old or something, but I registered the laugh. And then moving on, when I was 6 years old, I started piano. And that lasted until puberty, I guess. So I was constantly playing piano in the 4th grade. So I believe I was like 10 years old. The family up and moved to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, don't you know? We only were there for 6 months. My dad had something going on. And I joined the St. Anthony's Boys Choir, which was the school I went to and the church that was a part of it, because they have Catholic schools in Calgary. They did at that time. Anyway, I loved. My mother sang in the choir in church, and so I that was a big part of my growing up. The choir in Calgary, we were taken into a studio and to record a commercial. So this is my first professional gig at, I believe I would have been 10 years old, maybe 11, 10, I think. And we sang a jingle for the Bay's 295th birthday. Come to the celebration, 295 years. Da, 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 at the bay. Da, da. I still have it in my head. And I was a very solid soprano. And so that was my first professional gig. Moving on, I did sort of some community stuff where I grew up in small town Rosslyn, British Columbia, Canada. And I remember, another thing I remember is in grade 10, I failed grade 10 and I had to come to Vancouver to go to summer school. And I stayed with a social worker who was a friend of my mother's. And she, one afternoon, had this client come over. And this kid was, I don't know, in his 20s. I'm sure I'm like 16 at the time. And he was high on something. And I didn't know that then, but he was quite lively. And anyway, I must have told him that I wanted to be an actor. So that is when I finished grade 10. So that's in my head somehow, because he started to improv. He says, okay, he says, you're going to get on the back of my motorbike and we're going to drive down to LA and we're going to get you an agent. Okay. Okay. So, okay, so he started improvising. He said, okay, I'm going to be the agent. You come into the room and you talk to me. And it was I'll always remember that. But it indicated to me that I did have in my head at that time that I wanted to be some sort of actor.
Wow.
So there's that. And then my high school music teacher, I asked him, because I was interested in music as well because of the piano, and I played tuba in the band.
Oh, wow.
I said, where would you go if you wanted to go into either music or theater? And he said, well, if you want to go into music, go to the States. He was a trumpet player, and he was, I think he was very good. And so at the time, and so I looked into it. And at the time, Washington State had a reciprocal agreement with British Columbia, and I could go to the States and pay in-state tuition. I wasn't a foreign student for whatever reason. And I looked into Washington State University and I went. And I majored in theater, which I think they called speech for some reason. But my minor was in music, and I spent all my time in the university choir. Oh man, I just loved it. And my first year there, I was taking general university requirements, so I had a little bit of acting stuff, but not much. And at the same time, a good friend, Jerry Sylvester, was the dean at Langara College in Vancouver, and there was a program there called Studio 58, and my mother kept saying to me, Kevin, you should go to Langara because there's apparently an amazing theater program there. And I said, Mom, it's a community college. I am university material. I don't do colleges. So I lasted, seriously, I said that. So I lasted at Washington State University for a year and a half, and I ran out of money basically, even though in those times, the BC government gave you grants and there was student loans, and as a student, there was a lot of luxury around me. Anyway, I couldn't afford it up to it. And I indeed auditioned for Studio 58 and started there in 1980. And in those days, you could do 2 straight years, 6 terms in 2 years, and which I did. So I graduated May of 82. I tootled around. I got an agent. I didn't have to get an agent. An agent picked me out of theater school.
Wow.
I didn't have to do that. And then I did a little bit of theater, and shortly thereafter I auditioned for Stratford. I went to Stratford in 84 as an apprentice, a serious spear carrier, and then was bumped up to the young company in 85. And so here's one. So it had to be before I went to Stratford, because I was background extra in the Neverending Story, and it came out in '84. So I guess that it would have been '83, sometime shortly out of Studio 58. I was a background extra, and you can see me in the opening scene of that show. It's a shot in Gastown, and I'm a pedestrian. I'm wearing a beard and a tan trench coat, and I just walk across the screen. Almost 10 years exactly later, I was the kid's dad, so a supporting lead in Neverending Story 3. So that is really the arc of my acting career, like, so to get from sort of 0 to 100. And so that would have been the middle of the 90s, where I was quite busy in the middle of the 90s with a lot of sleazy lawyers and bad people, stuff like that.
But not in
So
Stargate, you weren't.
That's kind of that's. Was there anything else in there? Yeah, that's kind of that was my whole acting thing. But I really have a hard time thinking. Well, there wasn't one thing that said, "Oh, I'm going to head out there and be an actor because that looks good."
It was pieces of things that fell together.
Yeah.
Had you heard of Stargate? Had you seen the feature? This thing's coming to Vancouver. There was some buzz around it, from what I've been told. How did this percolate into your brain?
No, zero, none of that. I'm no kind of sci-fi nerd. I probably would have heard. Well, let me tell you right now that I looked this up, and MacGyver shot 94 episodes, and I bet I auditioned for at least 50 of those and never got one.
You and Tom. Tom didn't either.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
But boy, tried really hard. And then, so whenever after that, I got an audition for Stargate, and I don't remember, but I'm sure I would have heard that Stargate was going on. But no, it was the first episode. But I remember I went in for Dr. Warner, and the scene for the audition was operating
On Kawalsky.
on Kawalsky. And I remember very distinctly that so I'm actually operating, eye line and all this, and in the middle of it, and I don't do this very often, but I said, "Nurse, could you scratch my nose?" And it wasn't a written line. And Carol Kelsey, who was casting, laughed. I remember she laughed when I did that, and I'm pretty sure that had something to do with me getting in there. Seriously,
This tense situation. A character that we've been attached to from the pilot, which is the only thing at that point this is carried over from the film. And part of me wishes that they could have kept something like that had you gotten it past the audition. But also at the same time, it would have been like, I can see why, yeah. But for the audition, that's great.
I'm not one to, because usually I try to do word perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm trepidatious about straying very far from there.
What do you think happened? Like, can I analyze that for just a second here? What, flitted its way through your brain to where it was like, oh, I'm going for it? Was it just the ease of the room at that particular time? Because especially with really more technical roles like this one, you're saying a lot of stuff that's in some cases gobbledygook. You have to have an interpreter to sometimes help you understand it, just so you can believe what you're saying. Where is it on an instinctual level where part of you just allows yourself to, in that situation, go with your gut? Because as an actor, you have to do that a lot. You have to feel your way through a performance as well as say it.
Yeah, I shy away from a lot of that, but I know that I was comfortable with Carol Kelsey for sure because I'd seen her for quite a bit of time up till then, and also I was pretty comfortable because I often got like scientists and stuff who have 2 pages of, like you say, gobbledygook of like you need a translator for it, but I would have to memorize that in on set, and I was actually quite used to big chunks of that kind of stuff. So who knows uh, why that came into my mind, but I'm
Wow.
happy at it.
No, it's terrific. I This episode was a very, very early example that this show had legs. Uh, it is a favorite of mine, even though it's basically the only episode that exists after the pilot at this stage. And it hits home just how dangerous these things are, that we can't get them out. You know, there's something very scary about that. And Warner is confident that he can do the procedure, but he doesn't know that this thing has the ability to mimic and do all kinds of strange things. I'm curious, in looking back on that episode, do you have any other takeaways from that episode?
Oh no,
Okay.
no, no, David! I don't have that
Okay.
brain to think like that. I really don't. I did notice some bad acting in there.
Okay.
But no, the whole revisit of Stargate. I remember like a couple of situations. Like I remember being up in the control booth. I don't know if that was a part of episode 1, but it was when uh,
Terrell
some
Rothery?
yes, there,
So, yes,
and she
this,
was, yeah,
yes.
something serious had happened to her, and
Legacy, yeah. You're
yeah,
teaching people how to separate blood from plasma with the centrifuges.
that's right. So I sort of remember that being in the control booth up there. I don't remember very much else, but looking back, I remember Charles Porlier, the special effects makeup guy, beautiful man. I remember him sitting in the makeup room with him. I mean, I think we are just hanging around, but he was actually making the Guauld that I believe the one that came out in the operation, that slimy little thingy. Yeah, he was making that. So that was pretty cool. Like revisiting it, it sort of just reminded me of all the people that I met. Like John Smith, for instance. I barely saw him on Stargate, but what I in 1988 we did a beer commercial where I played the discoverer Simon Fraser going down a river, and it's a fun little spot. But he was in charge of the boats, and
Yes.
I remember him quite well. And I don't know if he was also a producer on the movie because I know that he had done some stuff. But I mean, it's just it was sort of fascinating just to rethink some of that. And another one is Don Davis, who I didn't. I'm not sure if we connected very much on the show, but we ended up we both got this commercial for John West Fish out of Australia, and it's shot in Ketchikan, of all places. So they flew us up to Ketchikan, and we had a wonderful, I'm going to say 2 days, 3 days maybe. But it turns out that he was a woodworker, like an artist in his own right, but he did some really precision kind of woodworking, and I was and still am into that. So we had a ton in common, and what a beautiful man as well, right? Like we just he was the greatest. So yeah, it's like some of the people like that, and of course when you've done this as long as I have, you watch the crews come from puppies, being assistant PAs, directing people in the parking lot to become directors of series, and guys on the camera becoming DPs over time. It's a pretty cool journey to remember that everybody was young, right? Everybody was.
We all have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And because the community is fairly small, you get to revisit them like every time you go on a different set. The crews are changing and you're changing, and then they're watching you at the same time too, right? So yeah, very cool, very cool.
Your Don Davis story is great because I remember him telling me once in an earlier interview, years ago, before I decided I wanted to be cremated. And that's how he continued. He said, if I ever had an epitaph on my tombstone, it would be, he was good with his hands. He loved woodworking. He loved carving. He loved drawing.
Yeah.
He was a master with it. And I so wish I could have had one of his pieces. I do have down here in this little pyramidal box here is George Hammond's one of two wedding rings that Don wore throughout the run of Stargate. So I do have a piece of him, as it were. Nice. But a salt of the earth, Ozark man.
Yeah. Love the accent.
Absolutely.
There's one other one in. I did Schmigadoon in 2020. That had come out, the first season of Schmigadoon, and after it aired and stuff, they invited me to go to New York for a panel for the Screen Actors Guild. I think it was to be nominated for a Screen Actors Award. So they flew me, I think 2 nights in New York. So it was a business class ticket, which I split with my daughter. So we went down and did the event, and then we spent 4 or 5 days after just running around going to theater. Well, in New York, as I was wont to do at the time, after we finished seeing whatever theater we saw, I went looking for a bar. And we were close to Times Square, and I found this bar, and I think it's called Ralph's Bar. And I go in, and it's, I'm sure it's 10 or 11 at night to start. And I'm thinking it's a very small bar. And there's one guy behind the counter, and he's entertaining some women at the bar, and I sit pretty close to them. And I just listen to the banter, and the women are actually quite foul, the language they're using, and I'm thinking, this is quite entertaining. And so I watch for a little while, and I talk to whoever's next to me, and I talk a bit to the bartender and this and that. And an hour or so in, he says to me, "Hey, you got a birthday coming up?" And I said, "What? How would you know that?" And as it turns out, he is a Stargate kook. And he recognizes me, and then I put my tab on a credit card, so he sees my name, Googles my name. I'm sure all while I'm sitting there, and realizes who I am. And anyway, I just thought that was incredible. I spent the next few nights at that bar having a wonderful time. He also did a mean rap kind of karaoke behind the bar.
Wow. Did he ever give you a free drink? Come on. Your
yes,
birthday's coming up.
Yes. And I promised him a Stargate card because I have had, I've had to sign cards and stuff, and I had some kicking around here, but I never did find it. Anyway, I don't know if he's a nut and nuts watch this show, he could be watching. And if you're out there, Andrew, here's to you.
During my Ben Browder interview, I relayed the one time that I could remember being spotted in public by someone who didn't, who heard my voice and knew who I was through Gate World, the show, the channel that I was all the way back to in 2002. And I mentioned this to Ben, where I was at a Subway, and this guy recognized my voice because he listened to our podcast. Lo and behold, a couple of days later, in the comments section under it says, "David, I'm still here." It's like, my God. And he gave it was clearly him. He responded a little bit more, and it's like, it is a small world. You never know where you're going to find a Stargate fan. And yes, we are everywhere, including behind bars, entertaining folks.
Oh, nice. Yes. Well, and hello to your, because I think there would be, well, there's live viewers, but there's also people who pick this up later. And hello to all of them out there, your viewer listeners.
Absolutely. And we've got some fan questions coming together for you right now. Should I dive into those actually while we weave through the rest of the conversation?
Yes, for sure. Fan question.
Yes. Raj Luthra wanted to know, and I need to kind of frame this. My understanding is that when they needed Warner, you would just get a call, or when they needed like when that character kind of fit into a situation, they would ring you up, because it is a base. There is a consistency in terms of, there is some obviously attrition and turnover in any facility, military or not, but they did want to bring in some consistency to that universe. Did you know if there were potentially plans to bring you in after season 3 for more episodes, or was it like, I've got a call, it's for this episode and this scene, I'm going in to do this job? Was it just one after the other when you would get them, and they've called me up, my name is up again, so here I go?
I'll be honest, I can't remember, but
Okay.
I'm gonna bet that what would happen is I would hope that they're gonna have him back, right?
Right.
He's a good doctor. I'm sure they'll have him back. You know, he's important to the story. I'm sure, like, that's what you would like. That's what any actor hopes for anything, right? And so I'm sure that's how it happened. I mean, I might have had some heads up for some of them, but I don't know.
For sure. Jacob remembers the episode Spirits, where you briefly played an alien who looks like Dr. Warner.
Yeah.
This was an episode where everyone was kind of an alter ego situation. There was a wolf on set during that time. Did you get to see any of that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, very good. But it's a great performance, because you don't often get to play characters who are playing other characters, except in science fiction. You know,
Yeah,
and a couple of
and
other genres.
I actually just watched that, and I kind of enjoyed my little thing as an alien. 'Cause I would tip my head like, oh, that doesn't. Like, it was really quite subtle, but I kind of enjoyed it.
Absolutely, and making people disappear by waving hands, doing this kind of thing a lot. They were doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
It's funny. Kevin Weaver wants to know, do you have any memories from Snakes on a Plane? A little bit more recent.
Yeah. And I was in the control tower, so I had kind of zero to do with the plane, and I didn't even meet the stars other than the people that I knew in Vancouver.
Okay.
So it was kind of a lonely little role, but high profile because of the movie, right?
For sure. Yeah, no, I have actually yet to see it. Because snakes really creep me out, generally speaking, unless my buddy who's a handler is specifically with me, then I can deal with it. But it's I've heard many things about. I remember Samuel L. Jackson. I think one of the reasons he did the dubbing for the television version, because he insisted on doing it. Sorry?
Because of the swears.
The swears, exactly. I'm sick and tired of these darned frickin' snakes on this Monday through Friday plane. It's so so absurd. Oh gosh, it was so
Well,
funny.
it seems to me that it was called
It had an alternate
Hawaiian
title.
Air. What was it called?
It had an alternate title, but I don't remember what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, it was like Hawaiian Air Heavy or something, like to denote a 747. And I think
Pacific Air Flight 121. That's so
okay,
generic.
yeah, and I think people around. It seems to me that I heard Snakes on a Plane before it was even announced or even suggested that it seemed to be the natural name for that.
Just go for the jugular, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. The things that get stuck in our heads. Um, Burned Bacchus wants to know, are you aware that you were credited as Kevin McNulty, McNaulty, in a Stingray episode? Or was this a typo by the studio?
I got to assume it's a typo by the
Okay.
studio.
Oh, come on, guys. You have one job for the tiles.
Yeah, yeah, and I get alerts if the N isn't capitalized. And then there was also there was an actor, and I think he must have been in Vancouver. His name was Kevin Clifford McNulty,
Oh, no.
and I never met him, but he was on something, and it ended up on my IMDb, and I tried to change it. I don't know if you ever.
I have tried to change things. They're very hard to do.
They're very hard to do,
Yeah.
and I think it might still be there. I don't think he got any credits after that, but whatever.
I'm happy to try on your behalf if you send me an email, because they also allow you to send documents, submissions as proof. If you email me afterwards about that, I will. It takes 3 minutes for me to go in there and forward the correction. I'd be happy to do that for you because I have an IMDb Pro account.
Oh, nice. Well, I might just do that.
Absolutely. You know, a tip of the hat to you for making sure that the right people get their due. Interestingly enough, N. John Smith has had that problem too, because there is another producer by the name of John N. Smith.
Yes,
And
yes.
not only do they exchange IMDb, have crisscrossed a couple of their credits, they also get each other's mail.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Small world.
Great.
Do you remember anything from working with Brad Wright in Travelers? Lockwatcher wanted to know. Another
No.
great sci-fi show. Okay. Yeah, that was...
Yeah. I mean, I even I don't know that I'm sure I would have met Brad Wright
Sure.
once or twice, but I would never be hanging with him or anything. I actually probably didn't know who he was even when he was introduced, like around Stargate.
Okay. Absolutely.
Right.
I enjoy the fact that you have all of these characters that we get to build a relationship with over the course of, in SG-1's case, 10 seasons of television. Is there anything that you have enjoyed about carrying on a performance, even if it's just little bit parts here and there over the course of several episodes or seasons or years of programming, where you get to come back and revisit this character and maybe add a little something more, or just like, well, the script is going that way, you know, in this episode. I didn't think that the character could do that, but let's try it on and see what happens. What is it like returning to a character every couple of years to take another stab at something? And do you ever, feel more of a kinship towards those characters that you get to revisit?
Well, that's pretty rare that you even get that opportunity, right? And like, I'm trying to think, like Stargate, you're suggesting that
We did 3 years on that.
It was 3, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, that's sort of incredible to even think of.
Yeah.
See, I don't remember that, but I mean, there's obviously a certain comfort to knowing that, well, you've been there and you're this guy, and you do that again. So there's a just a level of comfort just to start there. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, I did 3 seasons of Arctic Air as number 3 on the call sheet, and that's my comfort zone. Like that's where you go to work, and it's not new faces every day. You get to know people, and you get to know yourself and the situations that your character is going into and stuff. And the same with it's funny because just looking at my resume, brings back stuff too, right? Like Robson Arms too, doing a little tiny chunk on Robson Arms. There's there's some stuff I don't know about. Yeah, that's very rare. I did a couple of things on the X-Files too. I actually played Agent Fuller, and then in another season, I believe it would have been another season, I played Agent Fuller again, but it was a different Agent Fuller.
Seriously?
Yeah.
What are the odds of that? That's not exact. It's not like Jones or interesting.
I don't know why, but I think it was known at the time. Anyway,
So they knew what they were doing, and they did it anyway. Interesting.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if anybody's mentioned Frank Garcia in town. He does your demo reels, right?
Okay.
And so he has done my current demo reel. It's probably ancient, but anything that comes up, he has access to all sorts of stuff that's out there way faster than your normal, like somebody like me. So he sends me stuff, and he sent me something about one of the writers on X-Files, and I listened to it. I thought, oh, that's sort of fascinating. And then he sent me this book. It's right here. It's the something about the X-Files, but it's not the condoned version. Like it's not through the studios.
Oh, it's unauthorized.
Unauthorized, yeah. Well, there's a whole little section on me, and there's some stuff that I had never seen before about
Fuller.
Well, about X-Files stuff, and some, it makes it sound like I'm telling the story, but I had never heard the story before. But there is one where I had signed up for some theater gig, and X-Files came back. I think this is what with the second Agent Fuller, and it ended up going to the guy who had just worked on my house like 2 weeks before or something, right? Ryan Michael.
Wow.
Carpenter himself. Anyway, yeah, small.
Isn't that a small world? Gee whiz. No, X-Files has a ravaging fan base. There are some people and real conspiracy buffs go down that rabbit hole. Even Jean Deotta Smith is a fan of Arctic Air. She brought that up as well. She said there were a number of Stargate talent that appeared on that show. You just crisscross each other, throughout your lives. Oh, there's Tom Macbeth again. I just went up and saw Tom in March. He did A Doll's House Part 2 live, and oh man, he's good live. Just extraordinary.
Yeah.
Is there? I feel like a little bit like I'm kicking a dead dog with moving on to Chancellor Lycus with Atlantis. This was a number of years later. It's technically the same universe, but it's a different series. This was a volcano episode. You were a leader of another world. Brandy Ledford was kind of a lieutenant. She's been on the show. She's wonderful. Was it a little bizarre to be kind of back? Like, I'm in the Stargate world again, but I'm not? It was kind of funny. Was there any reticence to taking that on?
No, my goodness, no. I wouldn't even put the two together.
Okay.
This is a whole different thing.
Sure is.
So I looked at that one and I thought that one of my big memories about that show is that Peter DeLuise directed, I think, that whole thing, and what he would do. And with that gang of the stars, who isn't there 4 of them that are moving?
Yes.
Roman. Well, they're all on set. Something happens. I think I don't know if the earthquake is the volcano is about to go and things are shaken. Well, so there's got to be 20 people on set, like moving actors. And the scene would be perhaps 2 minutes long, and they would do it, shoot it, and then you would hear him yelling from somewhere, "Okay, we're still rolling. Everyone back to ones. Everyone go, go, go." And everybody would go back to ones. And I
starting position.
Yes, and we would have done the scene like maybe 5 times in a row. And I thought, how do you? And what does that suggest? That that's the first time that digital cameras were like you could just leave them running. It really didn't matter. I mean, I don't know. I hadn't seen that on set before, and it was mayhem, just mayhem, because you how do you fix things? How do you give notes? Like, well, do it like this. None of that. I'm sure there's technical things going on. Anyway, I really remember that. And the other thing is on Atlantis is that I see this actor and I think, who is that? And it's Jason Momoa. And I thought, I haven't worked with him, but I've been in the same scene as Jason Momoa, and I didn't even realize that, right? Like, I don't pay attention. I didn't.
Going back and rewatching now, it's like, oh my gosh, I've seen that guy in movies and TV. Yeah, you never know who's going to catch fire.
I know. So another fascinating thing about revisiting that whole world, right?
It's a small one, yet it's a significant one. This is a show that ran for 17 seasons of television, over 350 episodes in that neighborhood. And it's continued to have an impact on so many people. I've had a lot of people ask me, why do you think it's continuing to be a success in streaming? And I would like to ask you the same thing, not necessarily as a science fiction fan, but as a fan of arts and entertainment. Why do you think something like that can sustain itself with a fan base over decades at this point, with generations of people still watching it? Are we all insane? We could be. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I have no idea. I really liked, though, I mean, the first time Richard Dean opens his mouth, doesn't he make a joke?
Pretty much every time the first time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very often.
And
he's whimsical.
That's very attractive to an audience, right? Especially in The Enemy Within, you just jump in, it's a cold open into there's people banging at the gate and we better do something about it, right? And so it's a tense situation and he's just cracking jokes. So I think that's very attractive for an audience, stuff like that. And I don't know, even looking at it now, I'm buying the gate as like it's as technical as I need, like when you're looking at stuff, I buy that. Yeah, it's going to open up. There's this filmy stuff that you can go through. I get all that. So I can see why it's still, people are still interested in it. Great characters.
What is your plan? Are you still acting now? Are you planning on retiring anytime soon? I like to ask this, especially like if folks like Tom, Jay Brazeau. I'm going to be frank. The days ahead are fewer than the days behind. At this point, what is it that you want to focus on a little bit more in terms of any work that you do? What has time taught you about expending energy on certain things that are valuable to you. Is there anything that you can leave us with to chew on in terms of how we allocate our time for the future?
Well, first of all, I don't think actors are allowed to retire.
Okay. Jack Nicholson would disagree, but I think he's wrong.
But I don't think you're really allowed to. Talking about Brazo, I just did played Doc in West Side Story because Brazo dropped out
Yeah,
because he just got a pacemaker put in his body, and
he sure did.
he's fine. He's
Thank
fine now.
God.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I got the benefit of that little adventure. Um, um, this the whole pandemic thing that switched an audition in the room into an audition at home it changed things. In some things, it's a good way. I like to audition at home because you can do as many takes as you want and find your finest one and send it in. The downside is that you can't interact with the people who are in the room, right? You
Can't take any notes, prove that you can pivot.
Yeah. You don't get a rethink. But the other thing is that with auditions on tape, casting is looking at 100 instead of 12,
Correct.
right? And so I find that like over the last, well, since the pandemic, there's still auditions. Obviously, they get fewer as I get older, but I'm not getting the callbacks, even if it was a Zoom callback. I'm not getting those like I used to because the field is so much, and I think it so much larger. And I think that kind of turned me off. That I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing a lot more of this, And as a good actor, you still want to memorize your stuff, and you want to be as you got to spend some time to do those auditions, and so that's changed. But and things are going to keep a change, and don't you know, like people are worried about AI, and um, I I kind of think we have we will adapt to anything. Doesn't matter what happens. I mean, even if the industry goes away completely, something will. And I really don't worry that. I think people will always want real performances.
Yes.
Like I don't think it might be fun and it might be kitschy to see some AI generated like a complete film, say, but there's going to be something missing in it, and people will always want that. And I think you get that. You really find that in live theater, that it's amazing. Like you don't even know. Like you could be watching a film, but the idea that that person is over there and in the same room as you, and they're telling their story, and you get to feel it. That is a whole thing that has to be live,
Mm.
right? And I think it's the same thing in film. Is that you have to believe that there's a real person under there, even though you know that they're a character and they've got their lines written for them. But some actor is making that real, and uh, uh, the way somebody in the audience engages is by believing that and
Mm-hmm.
getting into the world, and that won't change. And I'm not sure that clever computers can imitate that. I really don't think so. I believe we will adapt, and I believe there's great hope for all of us.
A couple of things to that. I've been hearing I can't remember who it was who made the comment, and I'm pretty sure it was on my show. I may have watched it somewhere else, but I think it was here, where someone said, like you said, the industry as it currently exists now may be completely gone, but always something will remain. I think the other thing is that, and this wasn't my idea certainly, but someone had said that live theater will always, and perhaps even more so moving forward, become more relevant because it's in front of you and you know that it's real, and you're getting a visceral experience. Just going and seeing Tom made me realize, man, it's been a while since I've seen something live this intimately with this few people in a room.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more expensive, but the payoff is so much rewarding because he's right there. I could spit on him, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
just his whispers go straight to the back.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think it's cultural. So in Japan, they're big in anime, and they project these 2D characters on a glass plane, and everything's pre-recorded, and the characters appear to be on this stage, and the Japanese audience goes nuts over it, absolutely nuts. They do the same thing here with an audience, and people are looking at this like, what the heck is going on? As cultural norms shift, the acceptance for certain things is going to change as we move forward. You know, we're seeing now these kids that have more in common with their devices than they do with each other in person.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a cultural thing. It's what you're used to. It's what we allow them to be useful. And it's going to be really interesting to watch how the culture transforms in terms of not only how it interfaces with entertainment and media, but what it wants from it moving forward. And I think that you're right. I think that there will always be a place for real, and real may be in its various forms more relevant than ever before as AI takes over more and more for us, because them's the breaks. That's just what's going to be happening.
Yes, yes, yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, people are gonna. It's gonna be so much in our lives, and it's starting already, right?
Yep.
That people are gonna say, "Oh no, I won't. I'm gonna take a break from this.
Yep.
I find something real. Damn it."
That's it. That my car drives for me. My it does, you know, and it can do it for like up to 5 minutes. But my dad calls it two-wheeled therapy. There's nothing like getting on my motorcycle and driving.
Yeah,
Until they take it away from me for the same reasons. You cannot beat the visceral tactile sensation. I don't know if you've ridden of being in control of a piece of equipment, and there's an illusion of having control of your own fate, your own whatever. But I think it's a piece of being human. You know, to have connections with. People and things, and to like Don would carve, and it's more than just tapping a panel and getting a pretty result.
yeah, 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 that just sort of brings up the younger generation and
Yep.
what they're going to expect in the next 5 and 10 years. You know, as far as their entertainment is concerned, right? I think it's fascinating, but I have no fear that we will adjust and it will all work out.
I think you're absolutely right, Kevin. This has been a treat. Thank you so much for taking an hour with me to share your experiences and kind of painting the picture of your road that led you to the show and beyond. Anything you want to leave us with?
No, no, but really, thanks for this, and I'll reiterate that it really is a living history of film in Vancouver, and I think that's a real treat, and I hope like it's new to me, right? And I hope more people appreciate it. It's very cool. So thanks for doing this.
Absolutely, it's one of those things that has a slower burn. I find people all the time who are finding the channel, and the nice thing about this particular format, because it is an archive channel, is that all of the episodes are perpetually relevant, because we're talking about something
Yes.
that carries such an is of such importance to us, but it's in our past, and it can still be enjoyed now. Generations of Stargate fans have grown up around this thing, and they will continue to find the show after we're gone. So it's important to lay the seeds in the dirt to grow into great trees whose shadow we will never stand beneath. But Dial the Gate, I'm hoping will be one of those legacies for science fiction and television. So.
Yeah, well, good for you, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to wrap up the show on this side. I
Amen.
appreciate you being a part of it.
Peace.
Be well, sir. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. Hope you're enjoying our ongoing series. We're in season 5, and I think that I see the end of the tunnel coming for the channel in terms of the people that I've had a chance to communicate with. I'm just hoping that it's not the light of a train. But I'm really getting a sense that I think we've gone over the peak, and it's just a matter of picking up steam and getting a chance to communicate with some of the folks that I haven't gotten around to yet, because at this point there's a number of people who have just said, glad you're doing what you're doing, but not interested at this time. And Lou Diamond Phillips, we have tomorrow. He said no a few years ago, and now he said yes. So there is a little bit of that, but I'm looking to move the show in terms of a different direction moving forward here. So we're going to have to see how things go. But Kevin was very astute in kind of tapping into that. My tremendous thanks to my producers, Anthony Rowling, Kevin Weaver, and Linda Gabber-Fury for continually having my back and make this show possible. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this available on YouTube, please click the like button. It helps the show continue to grow our audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate fan, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. My thanks to my moderators who kept everyone busy on the back end here in terms of submitting questions. Anthony, Jeremy, Kevin, Lockwatcher, Marcia, Raj, and Jacob. Can't do the show without you guys. And Frederick Marcoux over at Concepts Web keeps dialthegate.com humming along. I hope to see you guys tomorrow for Lou Diamond Phillips at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be talking about Colonel Telford in Stargate Universe and his Tinderbox book series. And I've got another hour in my audiobook, so that's what I'm doing next, finishing that up. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you on the other side. All right, sir. Kevin, you're not going to be able to see me. I've got the end credits going, but thank you again